Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Draft Day Sports College Football 27 from Wolverine Studios. This is another first look into what the latest version of the college football game is going to look like coming later this summer. So, this first look is going to delve into the changes we made around recruiting. Um, so, I'm going to start by loading into a league that's currently just sitting in week one. We'll discuss what the changes are and how they're going to impact things. The first thing we want to point out is the dates and the stages of the season have changed a little bit. So we have a beginning of a season, 5 stages of coach carousel, staff signing um, stages, and then we'll run into spring games. Then we do 3 recruiting periods and then a final signing period. And I'll loop back around to that in a minute. Then we go into off-season training camps, summer camps. Then we go into regular season bowl games, playoffs, then end of year things, end of year awards, senior bowl. You have a phase where you can determine your red shirts. And then we go into official signing day. So this is where all of the recruiting you've done during the season is now going to commit all those players before we do the season flip. So this is, like as it says, it's considered the February 1 signing day where everybody is going to commit. So then at the end of the season stage, that's where all the transfers are added into the recruiting system. And then we'll flip it back around to the beginning of the next season. So in the beginning of the next season, you could have staff leave, you can have, staff new signings and that kind of thing. You can have players decide to transfer at that point due to staff getting fired or leaving or whatever. And so the recruiting period 1, 2, and 3 is really just recruiting any players that decommitted or players that have transferred. So you'll have those 3 stages, and then the final signing period is where you'll be able to sign those transfers. And then it takes all of the players that signed the previous signing day and all the players that signed in the final signing period, puts those guys on rosters, and then you're ready to go into training camps. So what this does mean is that for spring games, you won't have new freshmen or incoming freshmen on your teams yet because they haven't officially been placed on a roster until after the final signing period. Now, in real life, there are some cases where uh, some players will show up on campus early. That may still be something we're able to add in just to see if there's a handful of players that maybe graduate high school early, have the right personalities, the right traits that they want to show up on campus early so they could participate in spring games. But otherwise, they'll all basically just get dumped into the team right before those August 1 training camps. So this should be an overall improvement to the way the recruiting stages go. So you can get all those players wrapped up and committed and signed prior to the season flip. And then again, we have 2 signing periods now, one for regulars and then one's for transfers. So after that, what you'll end up with is some changes to our recruiting system outside of that. So what we've done is we've broken out the budgets into a recruiting budget and facilities budget and coaching budgets. So this comes into play mainly because to expand this, we've also created an NIL budget. Before we just had like an NIL rating for how strong your NIL uh, collectives were that were related to the program. Now we're actually going to kind of give you an NIL budget so that you kind of understand how much money they're working with. You can't direct specific amounts to players. I'll show you that in a second, but you can kind of let the collective know what kind of offers you want them to make to the players that you're recruiting. So it gives you a little bit more power. It's a little bit more like it works in the real world. So what we'll have is, I'm going to switch this over to targets. Um, we have delegate recruiting on currently. This screen still works the same way as it did before, where when you're ready to do actions. You switch the view into the action view. And then this case, we've changed this screen to be a little simpler to use, but also added uh, some wrinkles to it that are different from previous versions of the game. So in this case, you'll have a recruiting status where you could see your interviews, whether they've been scheduled or not, how many contacts you've had, how many phone calls, home visits, and then official visits. And then you'll see there's a recruiting action that you can take. And there's also a pitch, promise returns from previous versions of the game where you can make promises to kids. And NIL offers work the same way as promises, right? You can tell this is where you would direct the NIL collective to make a low tier offer or a high tier offer, depending on how much focus you wanted the NIL to put on a particular player that you're shooting for. So the way this would work is you would, if you wanted to handle this versus letting your coach staff handle it, you would turn off delegate recruiting, and now all of these boxes unlocked so that you can change these things. So in this case, the recruiting action we want to take this week is either no contact, meaning you just don't want to contact the kid at all, don't want to spend any money. And there's a regular contact, which is like a text message or an email or something simple, straightforward like that. Phone calls, home visits, and official visits. So these all will drive different levels of recruiting interest from the kid, just depending on what they're looking for out of your school, how well the official visit goes, how well the home visit goes, and so on. In addition to this, now we have pitches integrated into the larger recruiting system. So the pitch used to be something that you would do separately. You would do it from directly within the player dialogue where you can kind of tune your pitches and get some bonus points and that kind of thing for how these things work. We've integrated it in with the rest of the recruiting system. So now when you're doing your recruiting action, you pick the pitch, that you're going to use when you contact them, and the players will react based off of how well the pitch matches with your team's ratings and personalities of your coaches and whatnot, but also the players' personalities and what their desires are um, from your program. So you're going to have to pay attention to how they react to the pitches. You're going to have to look at their personalities, and you're going to want to pick the right pitch so that you maximize how much benefit, how much interest is driven upwards as you work through your recruiting season. So then after it evaluates how well your pitch, moved the player, there's also promises, which if you want to promise a kid, these are risk reward style options where you could promise the moon to the kid. Then at the end of the season, if you haven't met your promise, they start to get a little frustrated, and it really increases their transfer chances. If you just keep breaking your promises, eventually they'll get fed up and they'll look elsewhere. So, but they also give good bonuses to recruits in the recruiting uh, calculations, so that if you make a promise, they're interested in your program. But again, you got to follow through later, or there'll be consequences. That's kind of the risk reward that you do there. And then I've already mentioned the NIL offer, where there's 5 tiers of offers that you could make. 5 is the highest; it's the most amount of money. Tier ones would be the lowest amount, or no offer at all. And what the NIL will take a look at these tiers, take a look at how much money they have in the NIL budget, and then make those offers accordingly. So if you have a huge NIL collective behind you, you're able to make more of these really high tier 5 offers, which the you're directing the NIL to basically make these good offers to these kids, and it really drives a lot more interest if you're able to pull that off. Smaller schools, you're going to have to decide: do you do a couple of small tier ones, or do you put all your eggs in one basket and go for a big tier 5 offer for one kid, and see if you can grab a kid that's maybe out of your normal recruiting pipeline. And then scholarship works the same way. If when you're ready to offer them a scholarship, you check the box, and then that makes their scholarship offer. So I'm going to leave it on delegate recruiting for now, and I'm going to sim forward a couple of weeks, because you'll also get to see a little bit more transparency on how the kids are reacting to your pitches. So now that I've gone 2 weeks ahead, I can go back into recruiting. I can view my recruits. I can switch over to my targets. And you can see this Joseph Kelly, he's already gotten an offer from, it looks like Auburn at this case. So if you click on him, now a lot of these things are still the same, but we've broken them out a little differently. So you'll still have your scouting report where this has information driven by your head scout. Then you got coach grades, which I'll try and find one that has coach grades already set, so you can see what those look like. You get the recruit opinions, which is their opinion on how well their personality matches with your school, and you get that by doing a home visit. But now we have recruiting responses. You could see how they responded to your pitch and to your NIL offer. And so every week that you're actively recruiting them, you'll kind of see a paragraph about what went well, what didn't go well, what moved the needle higher, what were they not so much interested in, um, and those kinds of things. So this brings about a lot of transparency on how well is my recruiting plan working, how well is my pitch lining up with what the kid is trying to do. If you go a couple of weeks and they start, it just doesn't seem like they're getting really excited about your program. You may want to try to alter your tact a little bit, so you'll be able to see the different responses as they go through. And then you can also see how their interest is increasing. So in this case, he just has a little bit of interest, but that's better than no interest at all. And again, this guy is, the number 2 running back in the whole recruiting class, number 5 recruit overall. So it's going to take quite a bit to get him to move anyway. So let me see if I can find some other. I'm going to click through these guys so we can see if any of them have unlocked the coach grades yet. It doesn't look like it. But we've only done a couple of weeks, so that's how that goes. But these coach grades have now changed. I'm going to go a couple more weeks ahead. So the coach grades have changed. They're no longer numeric. Behind the scenes, we're doing some calculations, but the numbers just didn't really make sense before. The numbers really need to be um, they're basically just removed at this point. We pulled them out, and we have the numbers were being used for internal calculations to see how well the coaches are grading out that player, and that had to do with a potential number for how well they match what the coach's desires were for that given position. So a defensive coach may really like a player that seems to fit well um, into his alignment and his view of how a defense should be run. But the head coach might have preferred a different style of player or a different kind of defensive alignment. So he might lower his rating of a particular player. So this is how the coach grades were supposed to work, just to give you an idea of what the coaches specifically were looking for, not necessarily how good the player was in relation to all of the other players in the recruiting class, because that's all done elsewhere. These were just fitment grades, basically. So now we've replaced them with these high priority, low priority grades for the players, so that you can kind of see, hey, this player, this coach really wants. He wants you to make him a high priority player. Whereas if you get down into the lower ranks of some of your targets, you'll see these numbers change. A lot of times the coaches really do align on players because um, they're just generally agreed upon as being good players. But as you dive into this, you'll start to see a little bit of difference here, where in this case, the head coach is like, yeah, target this guy. And your OC and DC are like, yeah, I mean, you could target him, but we think he might need a little bit of work still. So that's why they have the developmental target on it versus just the straight up target um, goal for it. So the coach grades, again, that's just a way to try and give people a little bit more guidance on what their coaches are thinking without tying it to a number that didn't have a whole lot of uh, transparency behind it as to what that number meant or what number you should be looking for. So we've swapped that out. And again, you could see that this guy's got multiple weeks of recruiting responses that you can kind of click through. So that's kind of a first look at how the recruiting system has changed, some of the things that we're adding in, how we're tying it in with NIL, how we're changing up the way the offers and the pitches work. You can see here in the financial team information screen, you can see our budgets, but then you also have an NIL amount. So you can see how much NIL is committed on your current roster because NIL offers renew every year. In the real world, they kind of have to be renegotiated, but in the game world, they're going to renew every year. So once your NIL makes an offer to a kid, he's expecting to get it all 4 years. So the NIL money that you assign carries forward as part of your roster, and then so you'll have roster money spent that's already allocated, and then you'll have recruit money spent, which is the allocations you're making to your incoming recruiting class. So you'll be able to see how much money you've spent, what the budget is, and kind of how much uh, leftover money is there for you to make new offers, and how all the teams compare with their levels of NIL money and how that can affect things. So NIL's been fleshed out a little bit more. It's a little more impactful, but you also have a little bit more control over how that's working. Um, the only other thing that I did want to mention is when you do make an NIL, when you direct the collective to make an offer to a kid, that money's gone. You're not able um, to pull back the collective offer. So if they sign, it gets used. If the kid that commits elsewhere, whatever, you get all that money back. But when the collective makes the offer, you can't just pull it back. Um, you can't reap all the rewards of making the offer, letting the interest go up for a kid. Um, and then at the very end, before you offer the scholarship, tell the NIL, yeah, I just yanked the offer. So when you come in here to the recruiting piece here, that's why you'll see these are locked because these are offers that have already been made. If the kid actually signs with you, this is the money that will get assigned to your roster, and you're not able to undo this once you've made it. So you're going to have to make sure that if you're making these offers, if a kid takes 8, 10, 12 weeks before he commits, that's NIL money that's tied up waiting for that kid to make a decision. So it's another kind of risk reward uh, factor that you'll have to keep in mind as you move through the recruiting season. So that's all I have for now. Thanks for checking out this first look into Draft Day Sports College Football 2027. Thanks for taking a look at the recruiting system, and we look forward to um, the next iteration later this summer and all the good things that we're working on to put in here. So thanks for checking us out, and we'll catch you in the next one.